So a very warm welcome from my side. Welcome to this fourth and final webinar within the DyMoN project. Today we will be talking about learnings and recommendations for sustainable mobility from our view, the Dynamic Mobility Nudge project. And I have two great speakers today with me. And the next slide, please, David. What can you expect over the next hour? So I will give a very short introduction into the project itself. My name is Claudia Luger-Batzinger. I'm the project coordinator and I work for Salzburg Research. And then I will give over to my colleague David Leistner, also from Salzburg Research. And he will tell us more how we worked with digital nudging for sustainable mobility within a field test. And then David will give over the microphone to Harris Stamatopoulos from Sustainability InnoCenter in Sweden. And Harris will give insights into a sustainable mobility hackathon. And I will end then the webinar with key results and recommendations, leaving hopefully a little bit of time for question and answers from your side. If you have any questions during the talk, please just put them in the chat and we come back to them later on. And without further ado, I will start with the introduction of the project. So in the DyMoN project, we are dealing with a scenario similar to this. Click, please, David. A scenario where people are relying very heavily on individual car use. And this is a challenge that many cities face. And not only cities, but also we as researchers, we are asking ourselves the question, how can we go from this scenario to something that looks a little bit more like this? So where people are relying on more sustainable forms of mobility, such as walking, public transport, or bicycling. And this is not only a question of reduction of CO2 emissions, this is also a question of quality of life within cities. Because if we have less cars, we have more space for people, better air quality, and less noise. And within the DyMoN project, we hope to help one step along the way from the left to the right scenario by bringing together disciplines that are not always necessarily working together. Geoinformatics, geography, software development, and information technology meet psychology, the social sciences, behavioral insights, and innovation. And now, what is specifically the idea of the DyMoN project? So if you want to have more sustainable mobility within a city, you can basically go two different ways. One is hard interventions and the other one is soft interventions. Hard interventions means things like laws, regulation, bans, and also infrastructure. And they're not always possible. They are not always effective in themselves, and they can be quite costly, especially when it comes to infrastructure. What is needed in support of these hard interventions are so-called soft interventions, targeting motivation, social norms, the psychological side of things. And this is exactly what we are about within the DyMoN project. We, over the last 3 years, have worked on digital database behavioral interventions within this European research project in order to motivate and foster sustainable mobility. And we do this in an interdisciplinary approach. And this webinar series is our opportunity to talk about results, insights, highlights, and also challenges of this project. And with that, I would like to give over to my colleague David, telling us more about the field test we did.
Yes, thank you, Claudia, for this quick introduction. So my name is David. I am working with Salzburg Research for 1.5 years now, and mostly on the project DyMoN. And with this part, we will dive a bit deeper into the field test we had in Salzburg called Science City Aktiv Mobil, to show how we were working with digital nudging for sustainable mobility. So before we want to start with that, I would like to make a quick reminder of what nudging is. So nudging is a method to guide behavior into a certain direction. The great thing about nudging is that the freedom of choice is still preserved. So it doesn't work with bans or force people to make a choice, but it really changes the environment in which the decisions are made. This is the so-called choice architecture. And this could be done by presenting new information or presenting options differently. And a great example for this would be the default nudge, which basically means you change the default option of an action. So for printing, for example, if you say the default nudging, if you set it from one-sided printing to double-sided printing, then people will more often use the double-sided printing options They can still print one-sided if they really want to, but more people will just use the default option and then thereby save paper in the process. Another very effective example would be social comparison. So nudging really works because decisions and behaviors depend on quite a lot of factors, which include habits, which include routines, and those factors are not always rational. And of course, nudging can then be transferred into a digital context too. And this is then called digital nudgings. And I brought some example how mobile apps can achieve exactly that. So mobile apps can be used and are already used to guide behavior and also to support behavior change. And this is, we can see a lot in fitness and sports, for example. So our typical fitness app like Strava, they use digital behavior interventions, like, for example, rewards, reminders, or goal setting, and in some cases, even nudges to motivate people to, like in this case, run more. There are also some urban mobility apps which aim to motivate a switch from individual car use to bicycling, public transport, or walking. So basically more sustainable modes of transport. Here we found that some examples for interventions that were used in such apps were vouchers that were given out for a certain amount of kilometers that would bicycle. There were gamified elements that were used to help as incentives, and social comparison was implemented with leaderboards, for example. Now in DyMoN, we created as a part of the project the DyMoN nudging repository, which is really basic groundwork to be able to have this field test I will be talking about. So the nudging repository, we've talked about it before already, but really quick, is a list of nudges to motivate bicycling, walking, and public transport. It's mainly intended to be used as notifications with already existing apps or the systems. They can be sent out per mail and per SMS too, and can be used for commuting and for leisure trips. A special aspect of this is that we included situational factors that add context elements to these nudges. And with these context factors, like for example, weather forecast, infrastructure, or the bikeability and walkability of a road, the content and the timing of nudges can be better determined, and then as a result, fit better to the situation of the person who receives a nudge. This is quite similar to just-in-time adaptive interventions, which are used in the health field, for example, in alcohol cessation, but it's unique to the mobility field so far. And well, our nudging repository is based on a psychological model of behavior change, COMB model, which we transferred to the mobility field. The nudges were created in co-creation with citizens, and this showed that citizens didn't have too much concerns about ethics with this repository, but some concerns came up focusing on data privacy, especially with the inclusion of the data variables. It consists of 166 digital nudges clustered in 16 groups of behavior change methods. And we included 46 different behavior change techniques or interventions from the behavior change techniques taxonomy from Michi et al. The nudging repository can be used without data to inform the nudges. Then they would have no situational context variable, but could be scheduled with just a scheduled time frame. Here I brought you some examples from this nudging repositories. These are also some examples of nudges we sent out during our field test. Let's have a look at self-reward. The nudge reads, here's a suggestion. If you walk to work today in the rain, you'll have definitely earned a reward. Maybe some nice coffee, a slice of cake, maybe both. And the idea of this nudge is to prompt a self-reward in the user or the person getting the nudge when they successfully, in this case, walked to work through the rain. Now, finally, to the topic at hand, namely our field test and the nudges in action. So the field test was a proof of concept for the technical and behavioral aspects of the DyMoN framework. So basically, we wanted to show that our framework works technically and have a look at some of the behavioral effects we could achieve. And we're talking here about the effects of those digital nudges on urban sustainable mobility. It took place in Salzburg in Austria, in an area called Science City Itzling, which is a small part of the town where quite a few companies are located. Also, Salzburg Research is located here. And the campaign went from 23rd of March to 23rd of May in 2023. We worked together with an app called Pandox, which is an app for company health management, basically. They include workouts, they include meditations. It was quite a diverse content, and they allowed us to add our own content to the app. We used nudges from the nudging repository, as I said, and we also created a dashboard for the campaign, which you can see on the slide, a screenshot of, which basically shows some key variables we used for the nudges, also a map with connections of public transport to the location of interest, and some weather data. And this was provided by Trafficon, a partner in our consortium. So these are some examples of nudges we sent out. So you have an image of how it really looks during the campaign. They were sent via Pandox. We sent out 2 nudges per day, 1 in the morning and 1 in the evening. We started out originally with 3 nudges, but during a test phase, we got the feedback that 3 nudges a day is quite too much, because people started getting annoyed with the notifications and then started to ignore the nudge, which was counterproductive to what we hoped to achieve. We had 2 groups in the field test, 1 intervention group that received situation-aware nudges, and 1 control group, which basically only received generic nudges, so without situational components in it. Now, for a quick look into the app Pandox, this is how the dashboard looked like that the user saw when they opened the app. And as you can see, the first of these so-called challenges Pandox implemented is a block for Science City Active Mobile, which is our field test, where all of our content was located. Pandox included some gamification elements with these stars and little crowns, and we included these gamification elements too in our campaign, as you can see on the second image. So when we put a survey into the app for people to fill out, or when they successfully went to work with a sustainable mode of transport, they could click on the Belohnung abholen, so get your prize basically, on the third image on the right, to get some points if they went to work with a sustainable mode of transport. And this is also how we tracked whether the people actually used sustainable modes of transport. So the challenge descriptions we used in the app cycled through, and they were different for the weekend to make sure they fit to the situation better. We included the surveys in the dashboard, and also we created a community goal of 25,000 points that we hope to reach with this campaign, and we reached around 40,000 points. So we had quite a few motivated participants to be part of this campaign. And as a for these 25,000 points, we gave away a picnic, a community picnic, to foster a bit of a community. And yeah, this brings me to another aspect of the campaign, which was really important, mainly the community and the community events we provided to give some structure to this campaign. We started out with a kickoff event, which is in the upper right corner. We just introduced the campaign to all the interested participants. We had a guest lecture by Dr. Birgit Böhm, who talked about the effects of an active lifestyle and movement on cardiovascular health and on mental health. And last but not least, we had the community picnic with some of our most motivated participants who were chosen via a raffle. We got quite some interesting feedback to this campaign, these nudges, and concerning the different aspects of the campaign, we find out that the events followed by the nudges were the most motivating aspects of the campaign. For the nudges themselves, the participants voted nudges concerning health information. So stuff like when you that a sedentary lifestyle leads to this and this health problems, then this was the most motivating content. The second was information about the environment. And this means basically the impact of sustainable modes of transport on the environment. So how much CO2 or that CO2 can be saved by using sustainable modes of transport and things like this. And the third most motivating content was inspirational content, let's say like that, which was mainly formulated as motivational messages like, you can do it, we believe in you. I mean, we know that it's raining, but we know you'll manage, basically, in this area. Regarding the participation in this field test, you can see that over the course of the campaign, participation slightly dropped. So on the left-hand side, you see how many points were earned per day over the time of the campaign. And on the right, you see how many mobility challenges were solved over the course of the campaign. So you see there's a correlation between the points earned and, of course, the challenges that were solved. Each challenge solved means one person used sustainable modes of transport to get to work. And the different colors indicate different modes of transport. Blue is the bicycle, green is walking, and red is public transport. And you could already see we had quite a few people who went by bike to the workplace. And this was actually a problem we stumbled upon with this mobility campaign, that we reached quite a few people, but reached people who are already motivated to use sustainable modes of transport, or people who were already bicycling and maybe sought to do it more. And this is why we have so many cyclists. Also, Salzburg is a great city for using the bike. Now, as a quick summary and as some lessons learned, we saw that a strong motivator was actually the gamification aspect with these 25,000 points that led to the community event. Because during these events, quite often the points earned were a conversation starter between the participants, which was quite interesting to see. And we got quite often the feedback from the participants that they enjoyed working towards this community goal. And so in total, we saw that digital nudging should be embedded in a social setting, or at least work in conjunction with other measures. So digital nudging as a soft measure won't be the wonder middle you can use to change all the behavior you want, but it might be the final drip in the bucket to let it flow over, to speak figuratively. So it'd be the final nudge to bring people to show the behavior you want when you set or the other variables in place. And one of the biggest challenges we encountered was actually to find, motivate, and to retain participants. And you saw this over the course of the campaign, participation dropped. And what we did to mitigate this problem was to work together with companies here in Science City Itzling. And we stepped to them and asked them to join this campaign as a part of their sustainability process, and asked them to send out the invitation to their workers, to their employees. And this worked, but still there was the problem that we reached a lot of people who were already motivated or interested at least in sustainable mode of transport. And a lot of the people who go by car have very strict reasons to go by car and are hard to reach and to motivate with such a campaign. Now, for the technical aspects, we have also some lessons we took away from this, which is mainly before you start a campaign like this, you should do a test run. We did 2 weeks of a test run, and there were quite a few bugs to work out with the whole technical infrastructure that were used to send out the nudges. You heard quite a bit of it at the last webinar. And if you didn't, go back on YouTube and have a look at it. It's quite an interesting and informative webinar session. So it's best to use friendly users who get the experience and can give some friendly feedback. Then, of course, I already mentioned it, the number of nudges should be considered quite thoroughly. We used 2 a day, and this was, I'd say, the upper limit. And regarding the situational data, the concept applies quality in and quality out. So high quality data used for your situation-aware nudges will lead to a higher relevance and better acceptance of the situation-aware nudges. So, of course, if the weather data, for example, is very accurate, people will accept the nudges more. And yeah, this is already it from my side, from the field test in Salzburg. I will now give over to Harris, who will talk about the field test in Uppsala in Sweden.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, David. Can I possibly share my screen?
Yes, I will stop the...
Perfect.
Floor is all yours.
Yeah, let's see. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much, Claudia. Yeah, exactly. So a few words about me. My name is Haris Amatopoulos, and I represent a Swedish non-profit organization, which is called Sustainability Innocenter, where I hold the role of director in the organization. And together with Uppsala University, where I also work, we are the proud partners, the proud Swedish partners of this project. And one of the tasks that we had in the project as Sustainability Innocenter was to organize and deliver a sustainable mobility hackathon that served as a tool to put this theoretical framework that David and Claudia mentioned previously to action. And this is basically the identity of our organization. We try to identify elephants focusing on different sustainability challenges, which are actually identified, defined, and solved by individuals that have different backgrounds, competences, and skills. And we do that through co-creation processes, and a hackathon is one of these processes. Shortly, for those who are here in Sweden, you have possibly heard about the Uppsala, our county's innovation ecosystem, but the Sustainability Center is a part of it. It's a part of the whole innovation ecosystem in Uppsala, which has in the center of the whole innovation ecosystem the innovator. But Sustainability Center is working very much on the ideas with very low TRL, technology readiness level, and IRL, impact readiness level. Even in that stage, when individuals do not know about the ideas, in that stage that individuals do not even know that they have ideas. So invest very much on the human capital than the idea itself. And when you create new ideas through these co-creation processes, you have the whole innovation ecosystem to take over these ideas. And we're doing pretty well, as you can see on the right. So one of the key elements of the project was to see if this theoretical research and methods can be proved in reality. And as David mentioned, in Salzburg, there was investigation of the effects of urban sustainable mobility on the citizens through behavioral aspects of situational nudging. But in Uppsala, we followed a little bit different direction. We through a transnational or multinational hackathon, we tried to deliver pilots and research prototypes. And we used the nudging as a default. We used the nudging of the nudging repository in every solution that was created. A few things about the hackathon. It was not only a hackathon, it was a meetup. So we wanted from our side to make such an event that was a little bit broader than a hackathon itself. For those who do not really know the name of hackathon, it is basically a dynamic process that ignites collaboration and empowers innovation. And this is what Sustainability Center has been working with. And the word hackathon is coming from the word hacking and marathon. So it's a marathon of hacking that has different approaches of hackathons. Could be ideathons, could be when the technical solutions are not very technical, or the solutions are not very technical. It could be many different of open innovation processes, but the hackathon is basically a trademark that we have been using over the last years. And this hackathon, or this co-creation process, was held in Uppsala in May 2023 at the Green Innovation Park, which is a startup center here in Uppsala, but it was also live streamed via Zoom and YouTube. So the hackathon was coordinated and project led by Sustainability Center, but in discussion with the whole DyMoN team. So we're not alone there, and we're not alone in Uppsala either, because we had many different partners on board. For example, Ericsson, as you can see, that was part of the jury. We had two municipalities that were on board, giving and providing challenges. We had the Uppsala Innovation Center, which is one of the renowned incubation centers. So we had many different actors that everybody put a little bit of his own and her own ideas on how we could develop such a co-creation process. Let me see if I can change. I think it's stuck. There you go. Yeah, so the whole idea was to create solutions for 3 different specific mobility challenges. We followed the concept of challenge-driven innovation. So we had challenges, and the hackers tried to identify solutions for these challenges. And we used nudging as a tool and to scale the DyMoN concept, improve communication, and initiate new changes. And basically was cross-sector collaboration between different stakeholders, including governmental agencies, private companies, non-profit organizations. And at the same time, we try to keep our profile. We were very much working on this community engagement. Through our projects, we try to keep the Sustainability Center profile, which one of the key elements for Sustainability Center is diversity. You can possibly see on the poster that we have as a motto cooperation, co-creation, integration. So we believe very much in this collective intelligence of different people coming at the same space and creating their own ideas. And we wanted to keep that one, and we were lucky because we had many different international participants in this hackathon. So the hackers that participated in the project were experts, sustainability experts. It was researchers from different universities. There were students, there were city planners, regional and municipal employees. There were representatives from different transport companies and IT specialists. And the number of the hackers were we counted 128 individuals that created 11 teams. Some of them were online, not everybody was on place. And one of the challenges that we had, because since it was a hybrid event, is to bring together the different time zones. But in total, we had around 200 attendees, including jury members, partners, and mobility enthusiasts. And it was actually a quite big event in Uppsala, I have to say, with the website that do more than 7,000 unique visits. So the whole idea of the hackathon was to produce an MVP. So usually in the end of the hackathon, you produce a minimum viable product and test this product, and through the post-hackathon process, which is actually the procedure or the phase that is following the hackathon. The idea was to make a nice event that is welcoming for everyone, because from our side, we really wanted to deliver these ideas and these solutions. But all these people that you see there, they came with a different agenda. They came because they wanted to get new experiences. They came in order to initiate new ideas. They came in order to have to extend their network. So everybody had different agenda. You had to accept that and appreciate that. And as a public awareness, as a last point, I have to say that from then on, we have managed to make nudging a trend for the county. Of course, possibly those who work with the behavioral incentives know about nudging, but many people did not know. So after the event, we managed in the region to make nudging as a big trend. People talk about nudge in Uppsala right now. This is the hackathon process. I will not go through into details, but I want just to mention that the hackathon process is based in 3 phases. So it has it's separated in 3 phases: the pre-hackathon process, the hackathon process, and the post-hackathon process. And the pre-hackathon process has taken pretty much time, because you really needed to involve all the stakeholders. You needed to educate people on what a hackathon is, but also identify the challenges that would participate or would take into account into the hackathon. And then in the pre-hackathon process, you had many different seminars. We had to develop our online platform. We had to make this matchmaking. We had many different coaching and mentoring of the different sustainability experts. And then towards the big event, which was 11th and 12th of May, and was in Uppsala. So the hackathon process, or the hackathon itself, was on 11th and 12th of May, but it was a procedure before and procedure that is followed after the hackathon, the post-hackathon process, on how we can take these ideas to the next phase together with our partners. To the point, in the hackathon, there were 3 concrete challenges. One challenge came from the city or the municipality of Uppsala. The second one came from a company from Gothenburg, and the third one from the city of Gävle. And the Uppsala municipality had an online booking platform that after the COVID-19 pandemic was not used very much by employees. So it was a more carpooling system. They wanted through this hackathon to find solutions and make this platform more effective. So more people, more employees from the city of Uppsala to use the platform. The second one was from this company from Gothenburg, how you can nudge the unnudged people, how you can motivate and incentivize people that are not willing to be nudged. And this was also an interesting. The third one came from Gävle, which is basically focused on promoting sustainable transportation related to an initiative in Gävle, which was called Year-Round Cyclists. So this initiative includes the development of a technical application, but also an educational model around it. Basically the challenge that Gävle Kommun or Gävle City came with was on how, what kind of other challenges could be encountered if you implement this technical platform in their own policy and strategy. And there are different solutions that came from the 11 teams. One of the teams that Sustain Ut, as you can see here, they came first, that actually developed this application, which is based on an intelligence system with customized data. So it was basically an intelligent vehicle management platform for personalized recommendations and optimized resource utilization, replacing unsustainable practices with responsible asset usage. So they were actually encountering the data of the people, so the behavior of the people through historical data, and based on the behavior that this artificial intelligence model obtained, the knowledge could be extrapolated to discourage or encourage specific mobility means. And one good interesting aspect for this team is that they have already started a startup towards that direction. And this is a very nice outcome of the hackathon. And this is basically a model that this team developed on how they can integrate in their platform these 3 pillars of sustainability. I cannot show much more than that because this is under development of this team, but they have this triple planet or planet people profit approach in their idea. The second one was the the nudging experience, and I will not really go into very much details, but they had different approaches. The team really wanted to develop this community engagement, how you can promote community, how community approach can boost transport modes, encourage members of this community towards the use of sustainable mobility, but also try to, through visually appealing physical artifacts, to nudge people that are not in this nudging principle. And the third one was not really related with the third challenge of the city of Gävle, but the jury decided it was very interesting because they came with a very interesting concept. Let's not make a new application. There are so many different apps out there. So what we can do with the existing infrastructure. So this UL app is an app that is very much used here in Uppsala and Gävle, in our counties. And the whole idea was to integrate this micromobility approach through gamification and reward system for those who would be nudged to use the app. And this was through blockchain technology. As I said, there was a post-hackathon process, and which is still running, because you cannot really develop these ideas through this hackathon. You need to continue the process. You need to continue brainstorming together with the partners. So these are two small events that we held after the hackathon. The first one was together with the city of Uppsala. This is at the city hall here in Uppsala, where we discussed, and you can see you cannot start a workshop without bullar, kanelbullar in Sweden. You cannot really do workshops if you do not have these cinnamon rolls on the table. But this was at the city hall in Uppsala. So we're trying to investigate the possibility on how this idea that came up from the hackathon could be part of the procurement, of the new procurement of the Uppsala city. And the second one, which is also interesting, as I mentioned, the city of Gävle was trying to procure an application, which is called Better Points, imported by UK. But through the hackathon, they decided not to do that because some events, some spin-out conclusions of the hackathon was a good suggestion to not use this application because it was identified it was not relevant. So I think the outcomes of the hackathon was possibly negative for the city of Gävle, but it saved them quite big money of integrating a new platform that was not really functioning for them. Some summary and lessons learned from the proof of concept. Hackathons serve as a powerful catalyst for collaborative initiatives. We really believe in the hackathon approach. Then successful solutions from a hackathon can inspire policymakers to implement new policies and regulations. We had some politicians that came to our event in Uppsala. They did not know anything about the project, to be frank. They just came because they really had to come because they are politicians, which is great. But through this co-creation process, they were inspired. So, okay, something's happening here. So we introduced them to the co-creation process. We introduced them to sustainable mobility, to the hackathon approach. And this was possibly a nice and inspirational environment for them. The impact of collaborative effort extends beyond the project time frame. So things developed under the project, but there's time, and we have to continue with these ideas after the project. This project is finishing soon, but then you have to continue this discussion with all the partners. And digital nudges are noteworthy, but there is need for nudges to extend beyond this implementation. And this was basically an outcome that came quite many times from many different Swedish representatives, and also a master thesis of two students that we had during the hackathon. And as a last point, and I'm finishing, Claudia, a sum up, or this hackathon was a transformative journey, not a goal. So our goal as an organization is not only to deliver stuff, it is to make these happy faces. If we have not these happy faces in the events, then we have not succeeded. And I leave the screen to you, Claudia.
Thank you, Harris. I would like to look at the happy faces a little longer, but thank you for your inspirational insights into what has happened in Uppsala with the hackathon, and how this idea of digital nudging for sustainable mobility was explored in this co-creative way. I think that is very interesting and inspiring. And after these two great talks, I would like to close the input from our side with some key results and recommendations from the project. And Harris, can you show the next slide, please?
Yeah, I tried. My computer is a bit stuck there. Yeah.
There we go. So the key results, we have a project that is now coming to an end. And over the last 3 years, of course, we have produced many results. But there are a couple of results that I want to point you to specifically. One is the DyMoN nudging repository, which is free for you to download on the websites. You can find on the website, you can find all of our results at dymon.eu/results. And the DyMoN nudging repository is also there. It is a list of nudges, as David explained, and this is, of course, open access to you, and maybe you can use it in your own approaches. And then if you're interested in the more technical side and the technical infrastructure that we have used in the project, there is also information on our website on this. And I also invite you to go back one webinar. So webinar 3 really had a focus on this technical aspect of the DyMoN project, and the recording is available. And then a result that I am particularly proud of is the DyMoN handbook on digital nudging for sustainable mobility. And you can see a picture of it on the right-hand side. It is a publication that is aimed towards a really broad target group. So even if you're not coming from psychology, this should give you a good introduction into behavior change theories, and how you can work with it in your mobility campaigns. And then also we have the DyMoN dashboard that David already showed, that can be also seen as a live version on the website. And of course, again, I want to point out that the previous webinars are available as recordings. And now I want to go over to the recommendations. So we have had many learnings, of course, throughout the project, as you do, but I limited myself to 10 because 10 learnings and recommendations seems like a very good number. So the first one is, the first learning and recommendation also is that digital behavior change tools are a great, relatively cheap addition to so-called hard interventions. And I really want to emphasize the addition here, because they are meant to support other interventions, and we do not have the illusion that we will just nudge people a little and then this whole big challenge of sustainable mobility within cities will solve itself. But why not use those digital tools when we can, and support these other interventions and other efforts that are already out there. And then Harris talked about this already, but wherever possible, we should try to really leverage already existing apps and online communities, because it is a lot of work to build new apps, and not only that, but to bring communities within the app. So guide people to those apps. So if you have already existing apps within your community, your city, and I'm sure you have, we should try and make use of these first. And this is also the intention of the nudging repository, which is meant to be an addition to already existing apps. It is a very good idea to involve citizens, city representatives, and other stakeholders, ideally from the beginning, if you are starting with digital nudging or these mobility campaigns. Because this goes together with the fourth point. Unfortunately, one solution does not fit all. So David described in the field test in Salzburg a commuting scenario, but this might look very different for your neighborhood, for your community, maybe for your target group. If we're talking about families, if we're talking about students, this whole thing changes again. So bringing your stakeholders into a campaign as early as possible and listening to their problems and really identifying the barriers they have is a very good idea that should be followed through in the beginning. And then we have already talked about this also as a challenge that not only we face, but that also other mobility projects have, that we should maybe consider different views on sustainable mobility to reach our target groups. If we just keep talking about the sustainability aspect and ecological consequences, we might only reach those who are already very aware of those consequences and those aspects. But if we put a little bit of different spin on sustainable mobility, like fitness and sports and how good it is for your health if you move. Maybe this community building aspect that was already mentioned in the field test. We might be able to have interest from groups that were not previously so involved when we are just talking about sustainability. And the next slide, please, Harris. Then this was also our learning that data protection and a clear responsibility for digital services is very important to the users, to the stakeholders, and this needs to be very clearly communicated and be very visible to people. What happens with that data, who is collecting what, and who is responsible for digital services that you use. And when we are talking about these kind of data-driven solutions, digital nudging, where we work with different kinds of data, there needs to be a certain willingness to share existing public data and also make it accessible. For example, from the city side, maybe also from private organizations. But without this willingness, there will be no available and accessible data. And I know that sometimes different organizations are very hesitant about this and are a little bit afraid of the effort that it might take. But you can use existing data for multiple purposes. For example, within the DyMoN project, we have the data hub that feeds the nudging repository, but that is also the source for the data hub. So you can make your investment more worthwhile if you use data for multiple purposes. And then this is also a big learning, not only from the Salzburg side, but also from the hackathon in Uppsala, really complementing your digital tool with promotional events in the real world really helps. You can collaborate with NGOs, with public and private organizations. And if people are coming together, if you have something happening in the real world, this will make it much more relevant for your target group. And finally, I want to close with the statement that interdisciplinary approaches might need more effort in the beginning. You have quite a steep learning curve, I think, and you need to develop a common language. But I am convinced that going beyond your own discipline, so for me, going beyond just psychology, can produce much greater results and results that are really relevant to today's challenges that we face. And Harris, the next slide, please. So this was the input from our side. Thank you to my two great speakers. Thank you to David for sharing the insights from the field test from Salzburg. Thank you for Harris' inspirational view on the hackathon. And if you want to know more, please go to our website, or you can also contact us directly. And I think we should have a couple of minutes left for questions. And I already found a couple of questions within the chat, and I will just go to the first one. So there was one question that was, how did you choose the timing? How did you choose the time you sent the nudge notifications, for example, at 9? And was there any test done to find the ideal time to send the notification for better responses? David, do you want to take it, or should I say something about it?
Yeah, I can say something about it. So we decided on the time based a bit on the feedback we got from during the first test phase with our participants, and we picked a time quite early in the morning. I think it was around 6 o'clock, so that that nudges would reach everyone before they left for the commute. So some people commute really early if the way is really far, and we wanted to mitigate that by sending out really early. But I think it could be improved if in the app there's an option for the participants or for the people to choose a time of the day when they start their commute, and then you send out the nudge a few minutes or half an hour before that. That would be a way in which this could be improved and even more personalized to the situation person. And yeah, that was my 2 cents on that.
Thank you, David. And then there was another question from Sergio, if there were private partners involved for the rewards. So we used, I'm taking this one, David, if that's okay.
Please go ahead.
So we used an app that had this incentive system already built into their app for a different purpose. So they were very focused on company health promotion. And if people collected a certain number of gamified elements, they could receive rewards, they could take part in raffles for a week in the way and so on. So we were able to utilize that one. But in addition, we made sure to have our own incentives, mainly also for participating in the event. So of course, we provided free lunch. We tried to make it as interesting as possible for people. Yes, but there were no other private partners involved. At least from our side. I mean, for Harris and the hackathon, there were private companies involved as well. But I think this question related to the field test. Sergio, let me know if I've answered that or if you need more information. And then this is an interesting question from Ivo. Did you check if the quoted motivation nudges also led to the biggest behavioral changes? And do perceived, so claimed motivating factors and actual self, so behavior change match up? And David, do you want to say something about this?
Yeah. Well, it was quite hard to determine this because since we sent out basically two nudges per commute, so one in the morning, one in the evening, and our nudges were sent out randomized, so we didn't have any control over the content of the nudge really. It was really hard to infer from that the content really influenced the actual self, as you said it. This would take another test run where the content of the nudges would be controlled, and you have like 1 week for each aspect or for each content of the nudge, where then you can ensure that the behavior change that you see is really based on the content of the nudge and not on some situational factors that add to it. So we couldn't see this correlation as much as we hoped to, but I think it could be proven if you alter a bit the setup of this experiment or this field test.
Yeah, thank you, David.
Question so far. Yeah.
Yes, and I think this would be great for another project. I mean, what we did in Salzburg was a first test run, was a trying out phase. We were in a very pre-setting as well, so we did not pay our participants to take part in the study, something that is done very commonly in effect size studies, basically. But they were free to choose, and but this question on how much the behavior change can really be seen would certainly be something for a future project, but with this would need a much bigger sample size and a much more rigid study design. And I hope that answers the question. And then we have Carlo. If I wanted to implement nudging initiatives in my municipality, what competences would I need to secure? And I would like to give this question to Harris because he is our networker.
Yeah, thank you very much, Claudia. That is a very good question, Carlo, but there is not any straightforward reply here. It's a very complicated. What I would say is that we have the nudging expert here, that is Claudia, but from our side, that we have been working with the municipalities in Sweden, this needs a more collaborative approach. It needs to understand a little bit the need. You need to understand where will this approach will go, and then collectively try to identify the space where nudging can be implemented. And nudging could be, in this project, we have been working with digital nudges quite much, integration of nudges in these digital platforms. But as mentioned previously in the presentation, there were so much feedback from different cities and municipalities that digital nudging is one thing that can be implemented, but there will be different action points as well, as information campaigns or informing people, education, and so on. So it's a multi-componental approach, but we can discuss more about that.
Thank you, Harris. I just want to add from my side, of course, someone knowing like the behavior change theory would be good if you follow this nudging approach. But then, as Harris said, really depending on what you want to achieve and in which domain, it depends on what kind of people you need to bring on board. for DyMoN, we had people coming from geoinformatics, from software development. So you also need, for digital nudging, the more technical side, of course, so the people making it happen in the background on the technical level, basically. And then from Nicoletta, we have another question. In the example of nudging you mentioned, were there departments or team specifically dedicated to nudging policies? How were they involved? So I think, Harris, this is again a little bit into your direction, nudging and policies, and what kind of departments were they coming from?
Yeah, what I can answer here is that was not any straightforward nudging connected to policies, but nudging is a tool towards policies. From the project so far, we have not seen any policy change yet, but I think we are on the right direction. Yeah, there were more incentives that were integrated into the co-creation processes, but I do not know, basically. This I do not know how to answer here. We do not have any direct nudging connected to policies, but this is actually one of the outputs of this project. So hopefully, this is what we want to deliver when this project finishes. We want to develop a guidebook, the Nudging Bible, that would be a Bible for the policymakers towards this mobility transition using a nudging as a tool. This is basically what we want to achieve.
Yeah. So from our side, so nudging really comes like to support policymaking, as Harris already said, but I think the interest that we have received from in the project and into our various activities, it depends on sometimes people from, of course, cities concerned with sustainable mobility or with walking or bicycling are really interested in this solution. But we also had a lot of private companies interested in our solutions. So they want to develop their own app. They want to make a better product for their users. They want to support them in various ways. And yes, so I think that is my spin on this answer. And I hope this answers the question. And then we got some nice feedback in the chat. So thank you for your feedback on the DyMoN handbook. Again, we would invite you to download the handbook. And with that, we are almost out of time. But I really want to thank you for coming here. I want to thank David and I want to thank Harris. And I also want to thank Sarah, who is in the background managing all the technical issues of this Zoom webinar. And again, please check out our website, look at the past webinars, and we would love to hear from you. And yeah, thanks for coming. And I hope you have a great afternoon.
And thank you very much, Claudia.
Before we end, Carlo has his hand up. Do you have a question, Carlo?
Yes, hello, thank you very much. But I know we're out of time, so I don't want to hold you here in case you have to go. And I've already asked one question. So if there's anyone else who wants to ask a last minute one, I also prefer to leave them.
Well, go for it, Carlo. This is the last webinar, please.
Okay, thanks. So, well, first of all, thank you again for the entire series. Very interesting. And my question is that, well, we've seen all these examples of nudging initiatives taking place at the local level inside the cities. But, well, I'm based in Rome, in Italy, where there have been some nudging experiences, not many, but we still lack, I would say, a national strategy or something of the like. So in your research, have you by any chance encountered, any country where, for instance, within the ministry, there is a team that is all about sustainable mobility, behavioral stuff, or a department that focuses on that deals with making strategies at national level? In case, we'd love to know, to maybe have a look and have a good example to look at.
So my quick answer to this, I don't know, like specifically about departments only focusing about the behavior side of sustainable mobility, for example, because of course there are other things that need to be done. You need to have infrastructure and so on. I know that there have been or still are nudge units within governments. So they are taking in behavioral scientists for nudging for policy making, rarely about mobility, but maybe about health decisions and so on. So this has been happening, but I can see from my perspective that this behavioral aspect is now really coming to the front stage, and that people start thinking about sustainable mobility more from the behavioral side rather than from the system side. So this is good to see. And I think we will see more of that in the future.
Thank you, Claudia.
And Carlo, from our experience also in Sweden, we have seen that is a big confusion in the cities as well, that nudging versus information campaigns, nudging versus educational campaigns. This is something that, yeah, we have seen it quite much, but they are two different things. And I guess the whole process must start from educating the people in municipalities what nudging is and what is the difference between nudging and other approaches.
Perfect. Thank you, Harris.
Thank you, Carlo, for your last question. And yes, I think we need to go now. I think I will be closing this webinar. Again, thank you for your interest. I said my final words already, but I hope you have a great afternoon, and we all hope to hear from you. So take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.